I used to think I was a strong man, until I found that letter. The attic smelled like dust, old wood, and forgotten memories. Sunlight slanted through a cracked window, illuminating stacks of yellowed newspapers, rusted tools, and boxes that hadn't been touched in decades. I sat on an old wooden trunk, catching my breath. My doctor had warned me about staying active, but he never mentioned that climbing attic stairs with 73-year-old knees was a form of cruel and unusual punishment. I had no real reason for being up here. Maybe boredom. Maybe guilt over a lifetime of procrastinating. Or maybe, just maybe, something deeper had pulled me to this forgotten space today. As I wiped sweat from my forehead, my eyes landed on a small wooden box tucked between two old suitcases. It looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. Curious, I reached for it, blowing away a thin layer of dust before prying it open. Inside was a neatly bundled stack of letters, tied together with a faded blue ribbon. My heart stuttered. I knew these letters. They were mine. Carefully, I sifted through them, my fingers trembling. Then at the very top, I saw it. An envelope, slightly yellowed but never opened. Addressed to Mary Anderson. The attic suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. Mary. Even after all these years, just seeing her name sent a wave of something through me, something between warmth and pain. I swallowed hard, hesitating before picking up the letter. The ink had faded slightly, but the words I had written all those years ago still stared back at me. Mary, I had written, I don't know how to say this in person, so I'm writing it instead. I love you. I've loved you for years. And if you feel even a fraction of the same, please meet me by the old oak tree on Saturday. If not, I'll understand. A bitter chuckle escaped my lips. I had written it, but I had never sent it. My chest tightened as memories came rushing back. The way she used to twirl her hair when she was nervous, the way her laughter could light up an entire room, the way she once grabbed my hand and said, "Frank, you always think too much. Just do what your heart tells you." And yet, when it had truly mattered, I had let my fear win. Why? I could barely remember now. Maybe I was afraid she'd reject me. Maybe I was scared of ruining our friendship. Maybe I thought I had all the time in the world. But time had a way of slipping through your fingers when you weren't looking. My fingers clenched around the letter. What if she had been waiting? What if she had stood beneath that oak tree, hoping I would show up? What if I had thrown away the only real chance at happiness I ever had? A sharp pang of regret cut through me, so raw it nearly stole my breath. I had spent my whole life avoiding this moment. But now, faced with this letter, with the undeniable truth of what I had lost, there was only one question that mattered. What if I could still find her? I didn't know if I wanted the answer, but I knew I needed it. You mean to tell me you had the love of your life in your hands, and you chickened out because of a damn letter? Joe's voice boomed through the phone, followed by the sound of ice clinking against glass. I could picture him now, leaning back in his recliner, whiskey in one hand, remote control in the other, wearing that same tattered robe he had owned since Nixon was in office. "Thanks, Joe," I muttered. "Really helpful. Hey, I'm just saying, this might be the dumbest thing you've ever done. And keep in mind, I was there when you tried to impress that waitress by arm wrestling a biker. That was 40 years ago," I snapped. "And yet, here you are, still making dumb decisions." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I don't need a history lesson. I need advice." Joe took a slow sip of his drink. "Simple. You find her." I blinked. "Are you insane? It's been 50 years. So, you planning to live another 50? I groaned. "Joe, look," he interrupted. "You've been alone a long time. And I get it, it's easier that way. No risk, no heartbreak. But you're not getting any younger, Frank. You really want to go out wondering, what if?" I hesitated. "Besides," he added, "it's 2025. Ever heard of the internet?" I rolled my eyes. "Yeah, Joe, I've heard of the internet." "Good. Then use it." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him how ridiculous this all was. But the truth was, the moment I found that letter, something inside me had already made the decision. An hour later, I sat at my old desktop computer, staring at the blinking cursor in the search bar. My hands hovered over the keyboard. Then slowly, I typed her name. Mary Anderson. Texas. The results loaded. A dozen profiles. Some obituaries. My stomach clenched at that thought. But then, there she was. A recent photo. Gray hair, warm smile, those same kind eyes. And an address. 100 miles away. I sat back, exhaling shakily. For 50 years, she had been this close? I glanced over at the letter, still resting on my desk. Joe's words echoed in my head. You don't have time for regrets. He was right. I wasn't getting any younger. And maybe I was 50 years too late. But maybe there was still time for one last chance. I grabbed my car keys. It was time to find out. The drive to Mary's town felt like an eternity. 100 miles wasn't much, but when you were chasing ghosts from 50 years ago, every mile stretched longer than the last. I kept my hands steady on the wheel, but my thoughts were anything but calm. What am I doing? What if she didn't remember me? What if she did remember me, but hated me for disappearing? Or worse, what if I was already too late? I exhaled sharply, gripping the steering wheel. I had spent half a century running from this moment. And now, with every passing mile, I was running toward it. By the time I reached her street, my palms were damp with sweat. I slowed the car, scanning the house numbers. Then there it was. A charming little home with a white picket fence and a garden so neatly arranged it looked like something out of a storybook. A wind chime swayed lazily on the porch, filling the air with soft, delicate notes. I sat in my car, staring at the house. 50 years. 50 years of silence. Now, I was just a few steps away from the answer to the question that had haunted me my entire life. I ran a hand over my face. All right, Carter. You survived the 70s. You survived raising 2 kids. You survived 3 heart surgeries. You can survive this. I opened the car door before I could talk myself out of it. The walk to the front door felt like trudging through wet cement. I raised my hand to knock, then hesitated. What if someone else answered? What if she wasn't here? I swallowed my nerves and knocked. Seconds stretched like hours. Then, the door swung open. But it wasn't Mary. It was a woman in her 40s, her light brown hair pulled into a loose ponytail. Her soft blue eyes studied me carefully. There was something familiar about her face, though I couldn't quite place it. Can I help you? She asked. I cleared my throat, my voice suddenly feeling rusty. I'm looking for Mary Anderson. Does she live here? The woman's smile faded. She studied me for a moment, as if trying to decide something. Then, in the gentlest voice imaginable, she said, You must be Frank. My stomach dropped. I hadn't said my name. I hadn't explained anything. And yet she knew. How do you? My voice barely came out. She stepped aside, motioning for me to come in. Please. There's something I need to show you. I hesitated for only a second before stepping inside. The house was warm and inviting, filled with framed photographs, well-loved furniture, and the faint scent of lavender. And then I saw it. On the fireplace mantel sat a framed picture of Mary. Older, wiser, still beautiful. And beside it, carefully placed, was a yellowed envelope. My letter. Unopened. I felt the air leave my lungs. The woman, Mary's daughter, watched me carefully. My mom kept that letter her whole life, she said softly. She never opened it, but she always knew what it said. My hands trembled. She told me about you, she continued. She always said you were the kindest, most stubborn man she ever met. And she always believed that if you never reached out, there had to be a good reason. I clenched my jaw, fighting the lump rising in my throat. She never married, her daughter added. She had plenty of chances. But she always said her heart belonged to someone else. I let out a shaky breath. For 50 years, I had thought I lost her. And all this time, she had been waiting. My voice barely came out. Where is she now? Her daughter's eyes softened. She passed away 5 years ago. The words hit like a sledgehammer to the chest. I gripped the back of a nearby chair to steady myself. Too late. I was 50 years too late. The world felt like it had tilted. I stared at the letter. The same one I had written all those years ago. The same one I had been too afraid to send. She had kept it, but she had never opened it. My throat tightened as I reached for it, my fingers brushing against the delicate, yellowed paper. I wanted to tear it open. I wanted to see my own words, to read the confession that had been frozen in time. But then I stopped. What would be the point? Mary already knew what it said. She had always known. A deep ache settled in my chest. I had spent 50 years wondering what if. And now I had my answer. I swallowed hard. She was something special, wasn't she? Mary's daughter smiled gently. She really was. She stood and walked over to a nearby cabinet, pulling out a small, leather-bound journal. She wanted you to have this, she said, holding it out. My hands trembled as I took it. The cover was worn, the edges frayed from years of love and use. I flipped it open, my breath catching as I saw the first page. Frank, it read, if I could have one wish, it would be that you knew I never blamed you. I always understood, and I never stopped loving you. I pressed the journal against my chest, squeezing my eyes shut. She had been waiting. Even now, through these words, she was still speaking to me. I let out a long breath, nodding to myself. I had spent too long running from the past, regretting, wishing, but Mary had never carried regret, only love. I looked at her daughter and forced a small smile. Thank you. For this. For everything. She nodded. She'd want you to be happy, Frank. She'd want you to move forward. Move forward. For 50 years, I had been stuck in the past. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to start living again. I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in years. Take care of yourself, I said. You too, she replied softly. As I stepped outside, the late afternoon sun bathed the house in golden light. The wind chime above the porch swayed gently, its melody soft and familiar. I glanced at the journal in my hands. Mary had left me with something precious, not just her words, but a reminder that love, real love, never truly fades. I pulled out my phone and dialed. Joe, I said when he picked up. Well, the prodigal idiot returns. How'd it go? I chuckled, my voice thick with emotion. I'll tell you over a drink. You're buying, Joe said immediately. Figures. As I drove away, I glanced at Mary's journal resting on the passenger seat. I had lost the love of my life. But maybe, just maybe, I had found something else. Closure. And a second chance at living.